Welcome everybody to the Political Insider. My name's James. We have a very special guest today, Kayleigh McEnany, the spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Thank you for joining us, Kayleigh.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's get right down to it. I don't want to waste too much of your time. You guys are super busy. The primary season's over. It's crunch time, really, for the general election coming up here. So, I mean, I looked at the Real Clear Politics generic ballot average this morning, and, you know, all the polls are showing Democrats have anywhere between a 5 points, a 10 points lead on Republicans. You know, there's a lot of talk of the so-called blue wave in the media. So what's going on with the RNC and President Trump, and what are you guys doing to get out the vote in November?
Well, we're doing a lot. You know, first of all, we've been training thousands of volunteers across the country in what's called our Republican Leadership Initiative. They are ready, equipped, and willing to help a candidate when they become the nominee for the party. So there's that. There's also our fundraising. We have a 5-to-1 cash-on-hand advantage over the DNC. That's pretty extraordinary. Yeah. And our data operation, which is a $250 million effort we've put together over the last decade that really helped to mobilize support when the president, states like Michigan and Wisconsin, states Republicans hadn't won since the 80s. The RNC data was really optimal in helping the president secure those victories, and it will be available to every single candidate across the nation, and we think it will lead many Republicans to great success.
Yeah, so the fundraising disadvantage that the Democrats have, it really is extraordinary. You know, I mean, there are historical forces at work, right, where usually the opposition party can, has a lot of momentum behind it going into a midterm election, but it doesn't even, the Democrats may have an advantage at the ballot or on the polls for the ballot, but fundraising-wise, you guys are just blowing them away. I mean, I think you guys have, no debt. Democrats have a lot of debt. They barely have cash on hand compared to yours. What's going on behind that? Is it Republicans have a better message?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have a winning message. People see the economy in this country, thanks to President Trump and his policies and Republicans in Congress. The economy is soaring. A new poll came out the other day. It was actually yesterday that said 80% of blue-collar workers feel that their life is heading in a great direction. You know, that's because of Republican policies. So folks are noticing that and donating into this party because they support the president and they support what they're seeing play out across the country. The DNC, meanwhile, rigged elections. We know that. They rigged it for Hillary Clinton at the expense of Bernie Sanders. They're not to be trusted. Chair Tom Perez said we're not going to endorse in primaries when in fact he did just that when he endorsed Andrew Cuomo. So people are rejecting the DNC, the corruption in the Democratic Party, and are rewarding Republicans for doing things the right way.
So what do you think about the Democrats' message so far, if they even have a message? I mean, most of what I hear is, you know, there a lot of the kind of the ascendant socialist types in the party are talking about impeachment. They're also talking about, you know, Medicare for all, single-payer health care. They're bringing this strange mix of messages. You know, the most potent thing they have seems to be, you know, we're going to socialize the rest of the healthcare industry and we're going to impeach the president. Do you think that's even a winning message at all? Do you think that turns off a lot of people?
Not at all. They're a messageless party. I think it will turn off people. It's not a winning message. And, you know, resist and obstruct the president. That's not a positive agenda that will better the lives of anyone. And because they have this gaping chasm of a messageless void, I should say, you're having socialists come in and really ram through radical policies, things that are really contrary to what America stands for, like capitalism and democracy and freedom and individualism. They're rejecting that and trying to change the economic system entirely. We saw it with the socialists winning down in Florida in the gubernatorial race and also in Arizona in the gubernatorial race. These were candidates backed by Bernie Sanders that want to abolish ICE. You know, this is not a winning message, and Democrats are in real trouble.
So what do you think about the whole impeachment thing? We had on Sean Spicer, as you know, the former press secretary for the president and former RNC official. We had him on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how, yeah, impeachment is an actually real threat. We shouldn't dismiss it out of hand because it could actually, you know, if Democrats win back the House or, God forbid, the Senate, they might actually go through with it. Do you think that, you know, hypothetically, if Democrats take back the Senate, do you think they will actually push for impeachment? I know Nancy Pelosi has said, no, we don't like that kind of talk. She's pushed back on it. But do you think she'll have a choice if a lot of Democrats get in and they're fired up and that's what they want?
Well, Democrats have already tried to do this twice in the House, but to no avail because Republicans control the House. It's a baseless theory. There are no grounds for impeachment. There are no high crimes and misdemeanors. But make no mistake that the Democrats are so extreme that they will try this. And Nancy Pelosi, she's out there saying no impeachment because she knows polling shows Republicans and Americans generally, whether you're Republican or Democrat, do not want impeachment. She knows this. That's why she's saying we don't want impeachment. But make no mistake, the same Democrats saying no impeachment are going out calling the president an unindicted co-conspirator to Michael Cohen.
Right.
So, kind of contradicting and undermining what their own message is. So they will try it. We can't allow the House to change hands.
Right. So Mr. Spicer also said, they could work to the Republicans' advantage. I mean, he said that one of the most potent messages Republicans have going into the fall elections is that, yes, if Democrats take control, they might actually push for impeachment. Do you think that that's a good thing that Republicans should put out there and say, listen, we have a great economy, our military's, at the strongest it's ever been, we're doing all these great things, but you know what? If you don't come out and vote, you might actually try and impeach President Trump. Do you think that's a good message? Do you think that will work for voters?
I think it's important to caution our voters that not showing up at the polls will have dire consequences like this. There's no doubt. Democrats have been unhappy with the results of the election since Hillary lost. They didn't see it coming, and they've tried to stop this president in any number of ways by making up false, fake Russia collusion stories, by trying to bring impeachment charges, as you said, as we talked about, to the House floor. They've already tried that twice. They're doing everything they can to stop this president. So it is really important, very crucial to tell our voters the reality that we've got to keep Republicans in power to support the president's agenda.
Got it. Okay. Crazy hypothetical. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but say the Democrats do take back Congress and they do push for impeaching Trump. I mean, do you think a President Pence would take over and have the same kind of message that Trump has and would be able to bring out Republicans in force in 2020? Or do you think that's even just a crazy thought that'll never even happen?
I think it's a crazy thought. There are no high crimes and misdemeanors here.
Right.
Those are the grounds for impeachment. Nothing has been done that is wrong on the part of this president. So there are simply no grounds for it. And I don't think it will happen because I do think we'll keep Republicans in power in the House. The economy is just too good to think otherwise. So I don't think that that's a real scenario that will play out. Okay.
So your prediction is that Republicans will hold the House?
That's right. I do think we'll hold the House. That's where the real battle is. I think we'll expand our majorities in the Senate, but also, keep the House in the end.
Right. Republicans have a huge advantage in the Senate. I mean, it's like nearly impossible for Democrats to even get a foothold there. So I think, even if Democrats do happen to win back the House, the chances of them actually even pulling off an impeachment or anything like that will be stopped cold in the Senate.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We expect to expand the majority in the Senate because there are 10 vulnerable Democrats up in states that President Trump won. A lot of those races are looking really good. John Tester down by 2, according to an internal poll by the NRSC. You look in New Jersey, that was not a state that was even on our radar, but Bob Menendez had a 17-point advantage. Now it's just 6 points, and that's in a deep blue state. And that would make race number 11 that we're looking at that could be competitive. So we're really looking to expand our majority and hopefully break through that filibuster that has really put a stop to some of the Trump agenda.
So are you guys devoting resources on both sides? Are you guys focusing on keeping more of the Senate? Are you guys really putting it in on the House? I know there's been a lot of money raised by Speaker Paul Ryan for a lot of House races. Is the House the real battleground the RNC is dedicated to right now, or is it like kind of a two-front war?
We're dedicated to both. Every single race in this country we are not taking for granted. That was actually advice given to us by Newt Gingrich at one of our meetings, not to take any seats for granted, and we certainly aren't. So, we're pouring resources into both the House and the Senate. We've got to keep and expand this majority and allow this economic success to continue. The deregulation, hopefully more middle-class tax cuts, making those permanent, putting more money in the pockets of the American people. This is something that can be done and will be done, but it can only be done if we hold our majority in both chambers. Awesome.
So I want to move on and talk about Senator John McCain. A lot of speculation in Washington's going around right now about who might be his successor. There's talk of Cindy McCain, the widow. There's even some pundits are even calling for Meghan McCain to be appointed. There was an article in Politico yesterday talking Governor Doug Ducey. He's an ally of Trump. He kind of wants to stay in Trump's good graces. Do you have any insight into where he might be leaning towards for a successor?
Well, I don't have any insight into that. We know Governor Ducey will be making the choice. A lot of different names have been floated, like John Kyle. You mentioned Cindy McCain, Governor Ducey's own chief of staff. There's a lot of names out there, and Governor Ducey is waiting until after all the ceremonies and the funeral and the honoring of John McCain to make that decision. And we'll see what decision is made. I think right now the focus is on John McCain, honoring him, and my thoughts and prayers go out to his family. It's a really heartbreaking death and passing of Senator McCain. Agreed.
Now, the Arizona primary was just coincidentally this past Tuesday. Were you guys pleased with the results? McSally winning over the two other conservative or Republican challengers?
So we don't take a position in primaries at the RNC, and we don't do that because we leave it to the people to make the decision. We think they're best equipped, not an institution in Washington. And they always make a great choice. There's no denying that Congresswoman McSally is phenomenal, a fighter pilot, the first female fighter pilot, and what a contrast to Kyrsten Sinema, who was protesting the war in a pink tutu when Congresswoman McSally was out there fighting for our country and to keep us free.
Yeah, that's quite a contrast, her in the tutu. I saw McSally dropping, I think, an ad about that, pointing that out, which I thought was pretty devastating. Do you think she's got a great chance in November?
Oh, for sure. I think it's going to, she will soar to victory, I'm confident of. Her opponent, Kyrsten Sinema, had not been attacked yet by a competitor in a sustained way. And this ad you referenced was really the first attempt to shed light on why Kyrsten Sinema is not the right person to represent the people of Arizona. And as those attack ads ramp up and the truth comes out, people are going to see that Kyrsten Sinema is not someone that represents them. And we do believe McSally will win that one easily. But of course, Republicans must turn out because she only wins when Republican voters turn out.
Right. Okay. On that same vein, I want to talk a little bit about social media and social media censorship of conservatives. I know this is a big thing right now. The president tweeting out stuff, talking about Google and how, the results are skewed against conservatives and Republicans. I know Ronna McDaniel, head of the RNC, there was a report a couple weeks ago talking about how she, isn't appearing on Twitter searches. Some folks are calling that censorship or suppression. So what's going on there? Were you guys able to work that out? Was the RNC able to get, that fixed?
So that particular incident, yes, Twitter did fix. But I want to back up before that. The RNC, along with the Trump campaign, sent a letter to both Facebook and Twitter with a list of grievances that we've noticed where they're targeting conservatives and really suppressing their voice. And we asked for a response to that letter, never got a response. And instead of getting a response, we find out that our chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel, was essentially not populating in the search box, which was, in effect, suppressing her voice, along with others like Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows, basically all top conservative voices in our party being targeted by Twitter. And they did fix the problem. But the question we have is, they blamed it on their algorithm. Well, what in your algorithm says let's censor only Republicans? Because not a single member of the Progressive Caucus incurred a similar problem. So there's something going on there. It's really important to look into because conservatives ought to be able to have the same voice as liberals on social media.
Yeah. Do you think some of that's backlash for, frankly, Trump winning? I mean, you saw some of the kind of the so-called shadow banning of some conservative figures before, but it seems to have gotten worse ever since Trump's victory. And a lot of people blame Facebook and they blame Twitter and all that kind of stuff for helping Trump win. But it's like no one really, I don't think anybody seriously believes that people seeing, like a meme or something on Facebook caused Trump to win. Trump won because he was the better candidate, and Hillary was a very flawed candidate. So do you think some of this social media backlash is coming from Trump's victory? Is this kind of like Facebook and Twitter getting blamed by liberals for, their inability to win?
Well, we've had admissions from several of these companies, at least one, I should say, that Silicon Valley and tech tends to bring in far left individuals, that it does have a left-leaning disposition, the employees in Silicon Valley in particular. And in fact, today, interestingly enough, a Facebook engineer came out with a letter. And in that letter, he says, we are a political monolith over at Facebook. And, if you're not left leaning, you are the target of like a mob-like mentality, I believe were his words. So, when you have employees coming out and stating this, you do have to ask the question, are conservatives and Republicans being actively targeted because the individuals within these companies do not like their point of view?
Right. So this morning in Axios, Donald Trump Jr., a big surrogate for his father, he was asked by, I think, Mike Allen about, a conservative alternative to Facebook. And Trump Jr. was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. If it could actually start, we would push people to go on that kind of thing. Do you think that an alternative to Facebook or Google is a good way for Republicans to go? Or do you think that, the Facebook and Google kind of have such a hold on the market right now, it's hard to start up something new? What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with Don Jr. I think it'd be great to have a social media outlet that did treasure and at least allow conservative voices. And, this is kind of a free market solution to a problem we're seeing, because I was asked, this morning, what can we do about this? And the answer is public pressure and public awareness. And we are, engendering awareness with the president tweeting about it. And also, a market response. And a market response would be to open up another alternative that truly does allow all voices on its platform. So I think that's a really smart response and suggestion on the part of Don Jr.
Cool. All right, last thing I want to hit on real quick. Something really interesting happening this week with the primaries, specifically in Florida, right? You already mentioned the socialist mayor of Tallahassee. He won the Democrat primary. He's going to be facing Ron DeSantis, the current representative for the governor's race. Now, the DeSantis race against Putnam, that was kind of crazy, because at the beginning, Putnam, he wasn't favored to win, but then DeSantis gets the backing from President Trump, and he trounces him by 20 points. I mean, that kind of speaks a lot about Trump's influence over the Republican Party and his kind of leadership of it right now. Now, do you see Trump and Trump's effect on the Republican Party? Do you see that kind of outlasting him maybe, for the next few years if Trump wins again in 2020 and keeps going? Do you think that the kind of effect he's had on the Republican Party, do you think that will keep going after him?
Well, it's a good question. I think the endorsement situation, that's something that's unique to this president. We have not seen in the past or even post-presidency any individual having this kind of influence with an endorsement. As the president notes on the campaign trail often, I've used to hear endorsements didn't matter. And he's by and large right about that. They used to not matter. But with this president, it's pretty remarkable. You talk about the Florida race, that was a 35-point swing toward DeSantis after Trump endorsed. And you look at Georgia, there was a 42-point swing toward Brian Kemp after the president's endorsement. And New York's 11th congressional district, there was a 36-point swing after the president's endorsement. So these are remarkable numbers. I think it's something that's unique to the president, but I can assure you, once the president finishes up his 2 terms, he will still be an active political player. So fortunately, we will have him as a Republican ally for a long time to come.
Do you think that's a hard pill to swallow for some of the folks, even within the Republican Party, the so-called never-Trumpers? Do you think that's a hard thing for them to get behind? I mean, it seems like we're constantly relitigating 2016, where they just can't get over the fact that he's president. And he still has some prominent critics out there on the right. Do you think that this kind of Trump effect of the party is kind of like, listen, guys, it's a big tent now. We're bringing in all types of folks. Maybe it's time to let it go and get on board, especially with these upcoming elections where they're trying to defend the House and possibly stop impeachment?
Right. Well, the never Trump Republican has always been a phenomenon that only existed in the mainstream media on cable news sets. This president has the highest approval rating within his own party of any president in modern history other than President Bush during 9/11. So voters are behind this president like they've never been before behind another Republican president. And, the fact that you have these so-called never Trump commentators, they only exist on cable news sets. They do not represent our party in any way, shape, or form. And I think you're right. They continue want to relitigate the election because they're frustrated that they were on the losing side of it.
Awesome. So, just in closing, is the message kind of, listen, guys, we need all hands on deck. I mean, this goes for never Trump people, regular voters, all Republicans, even independents. All hands on deck. Defend the House this coming November. Stop impeachment and keep making America great again. Is that the RNC message going into November?
Yes, and turn out and vote. You know, that is key. We cannot get lazy here. We've got to show up. We got to get to the polls. And the president is motivating the base to get out there and to vote in midterms the same way they did in the presidential election. So we got to get out there. We've got to vote. The Democrats are energized, and we can't not show up at the polls this November. So that's the message: is turn out, turn out, turn out, and motivating our voters.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Kayleigh McEnany, spokesperson for the RNC. You guys can go and check out the website, follow them on social media, and, remember to vote in November.
Yep, exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.